live. Hi everyone, I'm Kim Campbell, and you're in my kitchen at PlantPure, and I'm glad that you joined us tonight. We're making something from my new cookbook that just came out in December, and what we're making is Smokey Mushroom Boscaiola. It's in the cookbook. It's on page 191. It's in the new PlantPure Comfort Food Cookbook. This is an Italian recipe, and it's a very, very old Italian recipe. It's something that's been changed and tweaked. You can do really a lot of different things. It's very versatile, which is why I wanted to share it with you tonight. Do we have people on? This is active? Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I have mushrooms, because this is really a mushroom-based dish, which is why I love it, because if you know anything about my cooking, you know I love mushrooms. You can use any kind of mushroom you want for this recipe. I'm going to get my pan hot. I have button mushrooms and shiitake mushrooms. I really like shiitake mushrooms, but they're a little bit more expensive than button mushrooms. Sometimes they're harder to find. They're a little meatier. They look like this. I tend to take the stems off because they're kind of woody and they're tough. But there's a lot of different kind of mushrooms you can use. You could use oyster mushrooms. I went to the Asian market today. They had a ton of mushrooms. Oyster mushrooms, shiitake mushrooms, and these are, what do you call them, snow mushrooms? There's different varieties of them, but we're going to have those later. But I kind of got excited when I saw all these different kinds of mushrooms. But tonight I'm doing button mushrooms and shiitake mushrooms and then an onion. And I didn't dice the onion. What I did is I sliced it. Sometimes I like my onions to be just a little bit longer just because they have a nice flavor, and I don't always like to just chop them up into fine diced vegetables. All right, so we're going to put that in the pan. Mushrooms cook down a lot. They have a lot of water in them, so you don't need to add anything to your pan. You don't need to add water or vegetable broth or anything. And a little bit, I'm going to put some white wine in here. You do or do not have to add white wine to this, but we're just going to let this cook down a little bit, and then I'm going to add a little bit of wine, and I'm going to add some garlic. I'm not going to add the garlic now because if I do, sometimes it burns really easily, so we're just going to hold off on that for a little bit. So bring them over here, Nelson, because this is the sauce, and right there. This is the sauce, and the sauce is a cream-based sauce. So in Italy, if you had I always say it wrong. Say it, Nelson. Boscaiola. I always want to say it the opposite way. But if you had it in Italy, it would be very rich and it would be very thick. There would be a lot of cheese. There might be some bacon in it. So we're going to give it that smoky flavor. We're going to make it rich. It's actually a comfort food for Italy. And it's an old recipe, so it fit really well in PlantPure Comfort Food Cookbook. So I have my blender here. And I'm going to add about 3/4 of a cup of raw cashews. I have a really good blender, so I did soak my cashews. You can, if your blender's kind of, not high speed, you could soak them. And then I'm going to put a couple of garlic cloves in there. The recipe calls for 5, so what I did is I chopped them up. I'm going to add them to my pan, but I'm also going to add them to the sauce, so you can do it either way. I'm going to add a cup of water. The internet.
Here you go.
Is my back on?
Yeah.
Okay. I am so sorry, guys. Our internet, we live in the woods, and we don't have the best of internet, so if you lose me, I'll stop. I won't go any further. I didn't go any further. I'm just over here cooking these mushrooms down, softening them, and you can see all that liquid coming out, sticking a little bit, but it'll stop sticking here. So we'll get that cooking. If you're worried about it sticking on your pan and burning, just take your white wine or your water and just deglaze it a bit. But those mushrooms do have a lot of moisture in them. Okay, so back to this very rich, creamy sauce. It has 3/4 of a cup of cashews, 1 cup of water, and 1 cup of, I'm using soy milk. You can use any kind of plant-based milk. Just make sure it's unsweetened, because that's tricky. When you're buying milk, a lot of times you don't know you're buying vanilla or sweetened, and then you end up with something that's not so good. Then I have 2 tablespoons of Dijon mustard. This is one of those staples that I keep in my pantry or in my refrigerator all the time. I use a lot of Dijon mustard. I would, if you're just new to plant-based, this is a pantry item. Get it off the spoon. Then some Worcestershire sauce. Probably said that wrong too, so I always do. And Worcestershire sauce is not plant-based, but you can buy, this is a plant-based one. There's different brands you can get. It's a little expensive, but you're not going to use a lot of it. It's really just for flavor. And then a couple tablespoons of nutritional yeast flakes. A tablespoon of smoked paprika. You want to make sure you don't leave that out. Some people like to use liquid smoke. I don't like to use liquid smoke because if you go too far with liquid smoke, it really can ruin the flavor. And then some salt and pepper, half a teaspoon to three-quarters of a teaspoon pepper. And then put your top on. It's going to get noisy, you guys. Hopefully Facebook will lower the sound. I'm going to put this on the blender. These little NutriBullets are amazing. I actually use mine more than I do the Vitamix because they're pretty powerful and they're easy to clean out and they're fast. So this is our sauce, and we'll add that in a minute or two. Now I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of the white wine. And again, you don't have to use white wine, but if you use wine when you're cooking, it just sort of adds that extra layer of flavor. See how much those cook down? I believe that was at least a pound of mushrooms, and the recipe calls for a pound. I might even have a little bit more. Now it's time to put your garlic in. You know, I'm guessing that's probably more than 3 cloves. But the thing about garlic is it's what you like. If you like garlic, go ahead and add, 6 or 7 cloves if it calls for 4. I mean, it's so good for you. But you notice I added it after those mushrooms were done sticking and cooking because you don't want them to burn. This recipe, when you see it come together, it is so easy. All right, now I'm going to put hang on, let me grab the spatula. Put the sauce in here. And cashews have a natural thickener in them, so it's going to thicken as it cooks. Turn this down just a little bit. Go ahead and put this in. In the recipe in the cookbook, this is really all I have you doing. Just putting the sauce in and then stirring it up and just letting it get thicker. And this is all there is to it. That's the recipe. But I never stick to a recipe. I always add more. So I wanted to talk to you about what you can do with this recipe. So last night Nelson and I made it because we had to practice it and make sure we did it right. I chopped up some spinach, fresh spinach. And then today I thought, well, you know what would be really good is sun-dried tomatoes. So I chopped up some sun-dried tomatoes. Don't get the ones that are in oil. You can get them in a little dry pack. This is what I got. So there's no oil in them. It's just 100% tomatoes. And then I took olives, because that's very Italian too. I took some Kalamata olives and chopped them up roughly. So I can put one of these in here, or I can put a can of tomatoes in here if I want, or I can put all of them in. So I'm going to put all of them in. I'm going to add the spinach, because we're going to eat this as a one-pot meal. I'm not making a salad or anything to go with this tonight. So everything we get is right in here. Then I'll add the tomatoes. You could add a can of fire roasted tomatoes if you want, and then some olives. I have no idea how this is going to taste, but it smells so good. So now you notice it's pretty thick, and you might want to thin it out at this point. So what I would do is take your little blender that you have all that extra good stuff in, mix it with some water, and because there's some on the blade too, I always do this because it just gets all that goodness out of your blender. And then thin it out just a little bit. It smells so good, you guys. This is amazing. I know that the sun-dried tomatoes and the olives are going to be really good. So you can serve it over the top of pasta. Last night we had it on top of gnocchi, which was really good. Or I'm going to do what I did tonight. I'm going to take my spaghetti. I'm going to put it right down in there. I looked for fettuccine, but I couldn't find any gluten-free, whole grain fettuccine. Nelson, are we getting any questions? They're just looking because this is so delicious. Then, let's see. Take this. Just kind of move it around. You don't want it to get mushy. I think it's done cooking, so I can turn it off. Otherwise, it's going to keep sticking.
I don't know, Kim, if you have the setting on your phone here where people can ask questions.
Oh, that's awful. That was the whole point. Sorry, guys. You know what? We haven't done this in so long. We haven't gone live. There's so many little details that Nelson and I are kind of figuring out before we go live. We're going to get better as we go. If you don't watch it live and you want to watch the taped version, you can watch it here on Facebook. We'll keep it up. Or you can go to YouTube, PlantPure TV YouTube, because I've been putting them up on that too, so you'll have plenty of ways to watch this. I don't think I'm going to add any more spaghetti. I think I'm going to stop right there. Look at that. You can garnish it with a little bit of parsley, or not. I'm going to try it in front of you. Let's see. Very hot. So last night when I had this, I put some red pepper flakes and some pepper on it because I like mine a little bit spicy. Nelson doesn't, so I don't think you have the red pepper flakes. But oh my gosh, the olives and the tomatoes really made this nice. Perfect. I hope you will try this. I hope you will try the cookbook, and there's so many other comfort food recipes in this book. I tried to go to different cultures, different countries, and find those recipes that were considered very traditional and comfort food recipes. So I have a paella in here. I have Asian dumplings, which we did last week. I have a lasagna stew, Thai fried rice, falafels, muhammara, all kinds of stuff. So I'm sorry if you can't ask questions. I'll come in and answer them later. Thanks for joining me, and I'll be back.